All right, welcome to Health a Second Opinion. Dr. Chad here with you. Excited about yet another week of bringing you some principle and some truth and trying to help you reach your life and health potential. And so we're going to be going through the Love Your Guts workshop, and we're going to be breaking this down into 3 segments, and it's going to be really fun to watch and be able to bring you this information that will allow you to take your health to another level. And so one of the biggest things as we continue our discussion on changing the world through changing ourselves, we really are looking in Max Living to changing healthcare and becoming a Max Living nation. And this map that I'm displaying here is where we already have health centers and where things are expanding to, with the concept that really we're trying to bring real healthcare to America, and it's not there. And one of the biggest, I think, displays of the fact that it isn't there and is to look at where we are today and some of the stats about health and why this Love Your Guts workshop is so important is that, the United States, while it is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the World Health Organization go through and they looked at the 11 highest income nations and went through and compared their healthcare systems. And the comparison was looking at access to care, the care process, administrative efficiency, equality, and then healthcare outcomes. And so when they were looking at these things, those were the 5 different areas that they were looking at. America ranks last. And I think that that's a huge looking glass, a big microscope to examine why we're having such enormous healthcare issues with this coronavirus, and why yet another challenge to the health of a nation. And we're having so many problems, more so than many other countries, because it's the healthcare system and our people are already a very sick nation. One study found that 74% of Americans have gastrointestinal issues, including bloating, abdominal pain, and diarrhea on a regular basis. And looking at the fact that 655,000 people die every year from cancer. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes, and depression and anxiety are at an all-time high. And just looking at the amount of things that the stress of this new health crisis has allowed us to evolve into has to be where we start to look at to get a real picture of why we're in the situation that we're in. And the digestive system, a lot of people just think of it as, well, it's kind of just a tube that runs through me, and I eat my food and it becomes the new me. And that's as simple or as basic as they take it. The digestive system, the GI tract is, it starts in the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestines, the large intestines, the colon. And so this whole process, it isn't just that though. It's the pancreas and, it's the liver, it's the gallbladder. It's this whole system that is so important because it is literally the absorption of all of the nutrients, all of the building blocks that will be the new you. Your child's diet is very important, but the health of their intestinal tract determines what they absorb of what they eat. So it's not just what you eat, it's what can you absorb of what you eat. And so when we think about that, the content is huge for our nutrition, but it's also about the health of the system that determines whether or not you are a healthy person. And it impacts so many more things than we give it credit for oftentimes. So one of the big concepts as we step into the largeness of the digestive system and its role on immunity, its role on our health, and not just our digestive health, but our entire health, including our mental health, is what's the microbiome. And so we have to be understanding that there are more cells of bacteria inside of our digestive tracts than there are cells in the human body. And so when we think about that, that's a huge number. And so the health of these bacteria, the good bacteria, are literally going to provide many functions for the body. And if that microbiome, that health, it's the gut that's lining, or the gut bacteria that are lining the whole digestive tract aren't healthy, then the person can't be healthy. And so one of the big things, taking a large view of this, kind of the 10,000 feet view, we have to go back to the concept that this starts at birth. And the health of the microbiome is determined at birth, because that's the starting point. And so when that child is developing, I guess it's actually in utero, because the development of the mother and determining the building blocks that build the fetus. And then at birth, though, that child comes out and its needs are now greater than they were for an immune system on the inside. And we're going to get to the fact that 70% of the human immune system is housed inside the digestive tract. So remember, stepping back, 74% of people in America have digestive system issues. So 74% of people have a compromised immune system. And that's just using the basic deductive reasoning logic. And so we want to put you into the 26%. And then we want to not only just put you into that percentage, we want to then get you and your family expanding that percentage to where we then change a nation's healthcare by bringing that to, 50% of Americans only have digestive problems, then only 10%. And then, and we are expanding the real healthcare. But back to birth. So once the child is born, the mother has been encountering the world and filtering it and having her own immune system. So her immune system has built up the colostrum with the IgGs and the IgMs and the antibodies that will then be delivered in the first gulp through colostrum to that newborn baby. So the first determining factor of a person who has a healthy gut, who has a healthy immune system, is whether or not they got that colostrum, whether or not they were breastfed as a child. So we've got to start thinking about this from birth. Conception, really, but birth at least. And so when we think about that, that determines the health of the microbiome. And so moving forward, these good bacteria, we need them. We have to have them to exist. And yeah, there's this amazing amount of knowledge. I mean, looking at the gut-brain axis and the role of the central nervous system through vagus and all of these things that hopefully by the end of this 3-part series, you're going to be able to follow the rabbit hole and get your own research going. But the fact is that your brain contains about 100 billion neurons that communicate with the body and control its actions and behaviors. And there's about 500 million neurons just throughout the digestive tract alone. Additionally, you've got all the neurotransmitters, things like serotonin, GABA, dopamine, all of these things that are controlling and coordinating and looking at how the immune system is being affected, how the digestive health is being affected and regulated. And you got to think, the way that we really encounter the outside world is through breathing, how we get our oxygen. So there's a lot of filtration that goes on in the lungs to protect us from viruses and bacteria. There's a lot of, our skin is a barrier that we often overlook unless it's looking bad, right? And then we pay some attention to try and fix it from the outside in. But we're going to touch base and bring in the knowledge of how that is a part of your gut health. But when we look at this, looking at just the neurotransmitters and this gut-brain connection, We think of serotonin and dopamine as the feel-good chemicals. And then we maybe expand on out to dopamine with Parkinson's and seeing how it affects the musculoskeletal system and all of these things as our knowledge base grows. But one of the things that we fail to mention is that serotonin, people estimate, scientists estimate anywhere from 90 to 95% of the serotonin that will be produced in the human body is produced in the digestive tract. So when you think about it, when you're looking at serotonin reuptake inhibitors and things like this is a 10,000 foot view, looking at how the uptake is done in the brain, they're affecting the 5 to 10%. Your digestive health will be affecting the production or the lack of 90%. Forgive me, I forgot to turn that on to, wow. You know, it's amazing. I'm sure you get annoyed by this stuff too, that I don't know a Salazar Jacobu from Portland, Oregon. But I hope you don't get as many robocalls as I do. When we're going through this, dopamine, science says anywhere from 50 to 60% of all of the dopamine that will be produced in the human body is produced by the digestive system. And so, I mean, think about the feel-good chemicals and all of these things that we know help run our whole body. And we have to then just deductively reason that to make the greatest impact on those, we must use the gut before we even start to really talk about what needs to happen in the brain. It's the first stop, because with serotonin, you're talking 90-95%. I always want to work on the 90-95% to get my outcomes versus dealing with the 5% to 10%. When we look at the receptors within the human body, there's 7 different receptors for serotonin that we know of. And 5 of the classifications of those 7 are inside of the digestive tract. And so, again, where it's impacting, the levels of serotonin, and then to continue our kind of connections as to the amount of weight, so to speak, that it has is, like I mentioned, 70% of our immune system is housed inside of that. And we got to remember, you know, just like I was speaking earlier about how the lungs are a filter, our skin is a filter, our digestive tract is a filter that has to block out the bacteria, the viruses, the prions, anything that's coming in bad, and keep it in the digestive tract to be excreted through our stool or to be dealt with and then processed out and through the urine. And then it's got to be that filter. And so that's why there's so much of the immune system there, because just think about the amount of things that we must encounter, from soil bacteria to, you know, bacteria that are on our hands, to viruses that are on our hands, to all of the things that we're dealing with. And we have a heightened awareness of today, just how big that must be. Pardon me while I get an idea of our timing here. Yeah, here we go. Learning some new, or continuing to develop my learning of this new software that allows me to bring you this PowerPoint simultaneously with the information. So one of the biggest things that I think is the concept that to fix anything, you have to be aware of the cause of the problem. So without that awareness, you can grasp at straws. You can try to deal with the symptoms, but you're never going to be able to fix the problem unless you're dealing with the cause. So identifying that cause for each individual is very particular. It's a very big concept, and it's most often done through self-awareness. So a dedication and an ownership of your health and your health journey, and taking responsibility for your health, because it's not I, the chiropractor, or the max living doctor, or it's not your MD's responsibility. It's not your nutritionist's responsibility. It's not your massage therapist or your dentist or your anyone who's on your healthcare team. It's yours. And the symptoms we call maybe dysbiosis, or then basically one of the biggest things is that we can see that, like I mentioned earlier, that 655,000 people die every year from cancer in the United States. And I brought you this slide to say that the health of our gut, seeing as how colorectal cancer is one of the major killers, the health of our gut determines also our susceptibility to cancer. The immune system is constantly roving the body, looking for cells that are becoming cancerous and trying to, kill them and remove them from the body before the cancer can get a foothold, right? It's cancer without the diagnosis. And so it's constantly doing that. So the health of your gut, not only just in colorectal cancer, but in the health of your immune system throughout the rest of your body, plays a huge role. And I think that one of the big things that we see is that gut dysbiosis isn't just linked to the cancer, it's linked to the heart disease, one of the other greatest killers. And the concept that I'm going to go ahead and call it just the sick care system, that our sick care system, the allopathic approach to treating someone, is literally to bomb the whole city. Instead of the sniper approach or even that concept, it's bomb the whole city, kill it all, and then let's see what survives. And hopefully it'll be the good bacteria. And every time someone uses a antibiotic, then that's exactly what's happened. It's killing the good bacteria with the bad bacteria. And so many people are familiar with Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori and acid reflux and in ulcers and the overgrowth of it. But the fact is that we're now looking into the treatment of that with this long bout of antibiotics and its disruption and permanent impairment of the microbiome of the digestive system, and therefore the permanent impairment of 70% of the immune system of a human being through the bomb the city approach. And so again, getting back to where real health comes from, I'm always wanting to remind people that health is an inside job. The regeneration and repair of your body can only happen by your body. Antibiotics don't repair the body. They will maybe impair bacterial growth while your immune system gets a bigger foothold. But it's never the drug. It's never the herb, it's never the supplement, it's never the chiropractor, it's never the anything that does the healing. Healing's an inside job. Your body is what does the repairs. And so the other concept in dealing with this would be to create a healthier environment to which that bad bacteria get weeded out. That's why we have the microbiome. This huge microbiome is in there, and the bad bacteria come through constantly, every day, 24 hours a day. You're ingesting something that has a bad bacteria on it. Whether or not it gets a foothold and can grow is totally determined by that microbiome's health. If there's not a niche, if there's not a weakness for that bacteria to exploit, then it moves on. It's like the joke that I love from one of my mentors, and he was always saying that, if you want to get rid of the flies in your outside by your trash can, or you don't need flies if you have them in the house, and the best way, you can spray them, you can use DDT, you can hit them with a fly swatter, you can go to all this other effort from outside in, or you can have a clean trash can. And if you put out a clean trash can, the flies come, they're not stupid, they look, there's nothing to eat, they leave. Well, if you have a clean, healthy microbiome, then the good bacteria show up, there's nowhere for them to get a foothold. And while they're trying to do that, the digestive system pushes them out and you don't have to deal with it. And so do you want to build health or do you want to fight disease? It makes more sense to me logically to empower my body with things that allow it to have less interference, less inflammation. If that concept works for you and that, then of course, then this will make a lot of sense. And so when we look at the inflammation in the digestive system and the bad effect of antibiotics, while sometimes very necessary, not going to discount that, saves lives, but the overuse of and the too frequent use of causes more harm than it does good. It produces things like leaky gut. So we got to think about the fact that, there's like 4,000 miles or 4,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet of surface area within the digestive system. And so when we think about all of that, that's a lot of territory, 4,000 square feet. I mean, I'd like to have my house be 4,000 square feet, right? And, I wouldn't want to clean it, but it'd be cool to have the space. And so the idea is that there's that much space, surface area in here that has to be coated with healthy bacteria. Otherwise, there's that much space for bad bacteria to get a foothold. And that surface area is designed to keep things out and allow nutrients in. And it's not like there's little hands in there that just, oh, well, there's some, magnesium. I want that. And we're picking things out. It's a barrier system and a carrier system to where things are identified and allowed to pass through. There are proteins embedded within the cellular structure, these gap proteins, and there are many other things that we can't take time to talk about today, that the health of that membrane, that barrier, that gut, is first layered with bacteria. And then it's kind of like a cheesecloth. And the more holes and the more gaps and the larger the gap junctions are, the more things that aren't getting filtered. And the more bacteria, the more proteins, the more fats, the more all of these things to which we want to absorb, right? We're trying to get the carbohydrates, we're trying to get the protein, we're trying to get the fats, and we're trying to get all of the micronutrients that we need and the macronutrients, but yet keep anything bad out. And so that leaky gut syndrome, and what is where we're going to kind of leave things today, is what are the signs that you might have that maybe you really need to step up your game with your health? In your gut health, I should say. And it's, constant bouts with, upset stomach and weight gain and fatigue and bloating, skin problems. Again, we've got to get back to, and we'll continue to touch on through the next couple of segments, just how important our skin is as a detoxifier, not just as a barrier, but as a detoxifier. And so, how important is this? Well, we know that Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome and celiac disease are bad enough, affecting millions of Americans. Remember, 74% of Americans report digestive issues, and many of them fall into these categories. But how about this? How about the fact that other processes linked to leaky gut syndrome and inflammatory diseases? Chronic fatigue, type 1 diabetes, lupus, fibromyalgia, arthritis, allergies, asthma, acne, obesity, mental illness, all researched and documented links to leaky gut, inflammation, and disease. How many of you have one of those? How many of you have family, children that have this? And when you start thinking about it, you're like, wow. If you think about just the digestive issues and then you add in all those other diseases, it feels like it's a heck of a lot more than 74%. It's more like the 90% of people that you know have something like that. Especially if we look into the just being adults. If you think of, hey, how many adults do I know that have one of those? And then the last thing I really want to leave you with today is it possible to heal? And the great news is that it is. It's absolutely, positively able to heal, as long as your definition of health is proper. If your definition of health is the absence of disease and symptoms, then, and all you want to do is treat the symptoms, and all you want to do is, quote, not have a disease, then the management of symptoms is not the production of health. But when we look at health as an optimum function, and I love this slide, and is that the body is functioning at 100%, optimal physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. When we look at that, I can give you, and I want to step into, and we'll talk about Alan Brown, and we'll talk about other people throughout the next couple of segments that have healed and have seen their bodies going through these processes and have proven, not through anybody else's research, but real live patients in the office experiencing what other people want to experience and baffling their medical doctors by reversing liver disease and reversing diabetes and reversing kidney disease and all of these other things that tie into the digestive tract. When we look at health from the perspective of, are you able to regenerate and heal? As long as you're willing to try to produce more health instead of just fight disease, the answer is yes. Now the question becomes is, do you have a doctor on your team that is helping guide you through that decision-making process and keeping you accountable and providing you this kind of information on a regular basis? If you and your family don't have that, then the likelihood of being able to be successful is lower greatly. So when we think about that, I want to, as part of this whole series of Health a Second Opinion, is the purpose of my life, and is to be in service of people to help them achieve their optimal selves so that you can go out and make the world a better place and live up to your potential, so that maybe we can make this world, leave it better than we found it when we arrived, and that you can be on God's purpose for you with better health and vitality. And so next week, we'll get into some of the ways to repair these things and help you get your gut health back. And thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Same time, same channel.